Amen. To the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The only minutes I think we have to consider are from September 11th.
That's what I was gonna
Does
say.
that make sense? I think,
I think you're right. We haven't had a meeting for months.
and what Scott provided us, I think, essentially summarizes what happened on the 11th. But before we go any further, Michael, do we need a stenographer?
No, we don't have to have one. For this. We can open up, we can take that, and then it's my understanding that we'll also be able to keep the record open for a closeout meeting. You can have the stenographer there to take any motions or anything at that time.
Okay.
It's usually she's here.
The minutes, although I was saying the first line, Monday, October 9th, I think it was Monday, September 11th. But other than that typo, I move that they be accepted.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Michael, who would administer the oath?
I can do it.
We only have one variance request on the agenda. We are going to have public comment time. If anybody intends to speak on the record, we're going to ask you to stand and take the oath, which our solicitor will administer. Will anybody be speaking? Please stand.
Do you swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
One appeal application for Potomac Drive. Ms. Scully,
Surely, yes.
would you explain what the situation is at 511 Potomac, what your application is requesting, and why you're asking specifically for us to approve this variance?
You want me to go to the mayor and speak?
Pardon?
You want me to go here and speak?
Anywhere at all. I think right now you could stand right there or
Microphone.
stand at the podium.
Yeah, so I started the process actually back in 2019 to build a shed on my property. And I did get it, at that time, a permit. And that didn't happen, and COVID happened, and anyway, then trying to save up to buy the shed and that type of thing. So because I thought it was not going to be an issue, I went ahead and had someone lay concrete. And I have, in the back of my property is a hill down below. I did have pavers and a retaining wall applied after I moved in shortly because it was like a hillside and I wanted to make it more secure, to give me a little bit more space. And then right to be in front of the guidelines that Scott stated that we want it to be in front of the house. Well, on the side of my property, it's a hill still, and then I already had to redo the retaining wall because it slid after 5 years. So the safest place to put the concrete slab was where it's currently at. And I do have pictures on my phone if you want to see the pictures.
Is one of those pictures included in the application?
Yes, all those pictures are included, I believe. Is that correct, Scott? Yeah.
Is this that?
Yes, yes.
Good, thank you.
yes. So if we did it on the, if you're looking at my house, it was on the left-hand side, we have a neighbor and there's a place in the back, but there's a drain there and it's like a hill. So there's really no place to put it on the back of my property. It's really close to my neighbor. So on the right side, I have a neighbor, but it's more than 25 feet from the property line. Is that correct, Paul? To the other neighbor on the right hand side of the property. So if you're looking at my house, it would be on the right side. And that was where I was looking at putting the shed. And originally got approval for that, so I didn't think it was an issue. And then when I talked to them
Could we
about,
stop at that issue
Yeah.
for just a minute?
yes,
What approval did you receive? Who said what, when, where?
I had received a permit, which I know is only good for 180 days, but that's the one that I originally had to see. And when I talked to somebody, they said I just had to come in and he was paid for date. But that's been a couple of years ago. You need this yellow paper?
Yep. Approved for what? I think we
To build a
may need
shed. To build a shed
to build a shed where?
on my property,
Where?
where I'm looking at doing it,
Where
where
the
I put
The X marks the spot.
That's the X.
so right here,
That's what was approved.
yes,
So that
Okay.
is the X.
No, because what we're saying is if we're looking at your home,
yes,
this approval was for the location being on the left side of your home, looking at your home.
no, the location was always gonna be on the right side of my home.
Okay. And that's what this,
Yes. Yes, sir. You need this or do you want me? It's in the same location where I put mine.
you called down here, Mr. Barnes came out, he looked at it, he issued that approval with a limited life, but a limited life going into COVID time.
And then I talked to him because that's when he was, he said, just let me know when you're ready, and then I just will move out the date. I said, okay, thank you. And a couple of years passed.
Ultimate Structures, your application, and Michael, I think the application has everything we need for the record, unless we generate something new tonight, which I doubt.
Correct.
But in your application, you have statements from, first of all, Ultimate Structures. And that's dated 23, and what Ultimate Structures says is that they would not be able to do a platform safely where the building would need to go. I don't understand that.
No, what? So
That is their quote.
I don't know why they stated that. So he was asking if when I talked to Scott, when he did the application, he asked if there was another place further up towards the house that they could actually put the shed. And basically they stated no, where that actually the platform where the concrete pad is the safest place because it's the only place that doesn't have like a hill or a slope. Did you get to talk to somebody from Ultimate Structures?
No, I don't think so. You know, my concern is, what you don't say, you don't have to explain.
Yes.
I think this email from Ultimate Structures, it's just confusing. I do not understand. They are saying you cannot put the platform there.
They were trying to answer a question. There was no other place to put the platform based on a question that Scott had asked. So
Okay. But the next email from Mark Eckley raises a few questions with me. Mr. Eckley gives his professional opinion that this is where you should put the shed. What qualifies Mr. Eckley as a professional?
He's been doing landscaping and building buildings and doing concrete for over 20-some years. So he's done structures before.
He has done work on your property in the past.
Yes, he's actually the one that did the pavers, he's the one that did the retaining wall, he's done all that. He actually does that for many people throughout Pittsburgh.
And that retaining wall is the retaining wall that has failed.
Well, it's because there's a slope and then the hillside is falling away, so to speak. So he had to like move it back. That's just one part there next to where the driveway is. That's why there's no room to move the concrete slab over to the left because that's not really safe, not sure, because you keep sliding.
You know, he goes on to say, in my professional opinion, is not a good place. And an engineer would most likely agree with me. Just so happens, I am a civil engineer, among other things. And I see nothing that he has said that explains why the shed can't be moved somewhere else. He calls himself a professional, but he gives no specifics, no detail, no explanation as to the slope stability, sub-adjacent support that may be needed for your neighbors. And he says, any engineer, well, here I am. He just doesn't give us anything. It's like he says, trust me. And we need a record that says that there is a reason that that shed cannot be located within the confines of the zoning code.
I thought those two testimonies was enough. I do apologize.
I understand.
So,
Have you talked to your neighbor on that side?
they rent from somebody, so I've not talked to the person that actually owns the property.
I think for the record, Scott in particular, and I thought about calling you and saying this, but it's so important that the neighbors have input. I know they get notified, but if a property owner that has an application for variance can say that the neighbors are all in favor of it, it really makes our job easier, because one of the things we have to do is, in the 5 steps, make sure that the variance, if issued, does not change the character of the neighborhood. The best way to assure that it is not changing the character of the neighborhood is for the neighbors to say it is not. Questions?
No, you asked all the same questions that I was, you just put them in the middle of it.
But I do have one concern with Mark Eckley's email. Is he threatening that if we do not issue this variance, he will go after South Steubenville Township to recover?
Oh, no, sir. No, sir.
That's pretty much what he says right here. He says you should either be allowed to put a beautiful shed there or be reimbursed for her expense.
Yeah.
I think I can speak on behalf of the township. We do not appreciate threats.
I don't think it was meant to be a threat, so I do apologize. Again, I think he was just trying to state that that was the best place to put the shed, so I didn't realize.
Yeah, I think the problem is he is saying that's the best place to put it. But there's no justification, there's no explanation, there's no concern about the subjacent support, there's no concern about the ground, the the flow of water, the water table, none of those issues that could affect the proper location for the shed are touched upon at all. And he makes the comment that any engineer would understand that this is not, that this is the place where you should place the shed. Well, I'm an engineer and I don't understand anything because he hasn't given us any detail.
I don't know his, educational background or if he has a degree. I don't believe he does, but I think he's been in the contracting, so I don't know.
We need a little more.
Well stated, Teresa. I think you give us that explanation. What are the factors that are being considered? A retaining wall failed. Why did it fail? How much of a problem is created by that hillside behind you? Give us some information. Give us something to put into the record so that we can say, yes, that hillside is unstable and to erect a shed back there would be hazardous. It would be risky. He doesn't give us any of that. He simply says, trust me. And if you don't trust me, cover our expenses. But if he would give us something that gives us a basis on the record to say that this is the only spot on the property where the shed can be safely, permanently erected, it would make our life a whole lot easier.
Can you have something from Ultimate Structures, or does it have to be from Mark? The Ultimate Structures, I'm sure, has an engineer that works with that, so.
And again, we don't need them here necessarily,
No,
but
no, I don't
if-
either, but do you need something in writing from them? to
yes,
state
we
that?
do need something to put into the record that will explain why other locations are not viable and why this location does reasonably assure that the structure will be safely and long-term stable.
And I'll go back to Michelle from Ultimate Structures and get something,
Michael,
is that okay?
is this making sense?
That's fine. Yeah, you're asking for additional
It makes
documentation.
sense
to
to me. I
justify.
totally understand where it's coming from.
Good.
I thought the letters were enough, but I apologize.
No need. You don't need to apologize. Quite honestly, in my professional opinion, I think Mr. Mark Eckley should apologize to you for not providing that detail so that your application could be expeditiously acted upon. Thank you. And if you possibly could get a comment from the neighbor, a positive comment,
Okay.
okay?
Any
And,
neighbor, just the neighbor down to the left.
pardon,
Any of my neighbors, because I do know the other neighbors.
any of them, and I would say particularly the neighbors, neighbors across the street,
I know the neighbors across the street. Yes.
they are important because the change in the condition of the neighborhood would be most visible by those looking at your property. So it would really help if they could just, and all they have to do is write a little note or send an email to the office. That would help. I didn't look through it in detail.
What was it?
Yeah, you're gonna continue to get additional information, so we'll address it then. If there's additional comments from any neighbors, we can deal that at the next meeting.
And Michael, those could simply be an email that they send, South Strabane Township. We're the neighbor and we are fully supportive of the shed being erected in that location.
The board has accepted similar correspondence I like that, so yeah.
Thank you.
And I would just,
Thank you.
my only question is if the proposal if your request is granted by the board, does it meet the side yard setbacks of the R1 district, everything where it's proposed? Is this this is the only issue is that it's in the front, so the where it's located is okay on the side, so there's no issue, okay.
Thank you. Scott, should we assume at our January meeting, we will be able to bring this issue up and get it resolved. So if we can get everything in, preferably, excuse me, a couple weeks before our January meeting in January would be somewhere around the 10th to 12th.
This is the eighth, the next meeting.
Yeah, because
If
January
you-
1 is a Monday.
If you possibly could
Yeah,
have it in by January 1st.
Okay.
Then we can take a look at it, and if we have any questions, we can get them to you even before the next meeting. A question, Michael. When we approve a variance, the variance lives with the property.
Correct.
Can we put a term limit on a variance? Okay. No way.
No. There are things that could happen legally that would terminate or abandon that variance, some of the non-conforming use, things of that nature, but no, once you grant that, they can.
It's nothing
expand
to
it,
do here, just a
yeah.
question I've had
No,
floating around.
unfortunately, yeah. Runs with the land, as long as it's in compliance. Can expand it, can do different things, but yeah. it runs with the land.
Okay. To be continued. Any other action that we need to take?
I guess there's other individuals, I guess you can open it up if anyone wants that.
Yes,
comment
I
on
agree,
that?
but on this matter,
Oh, on this matter, yeah, no, so I would just make a recommendation that the board continue this until the January 8th. And continue the matter, hold it open for additional testimony and receive additional comments and documentation from the applicant. So just make a motion there. We'll withhold, entering any exhibits in the record. We'll just continue the hearing.
so I move we hold this issue open and continue to the January 8th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous once again. Public comments.
Just to South Main Street. I guess the main thing I want to address is our township, a lot of our township is mature. A lot of it's not, but a lot of our township is mature. And there are pieces of property all around our township that are buildable. Might not have been desirable 20, 30 years ago when the plan was done, 40, 50 years ago, but they're now desirable. And I think it's important that not only the zoning board, but our staff, every member of our staff, understand and appreciates the respect of their neighbors whenever people come in to do that. To be sure that it not only conforms with our regulations, it conforms with the neighborhood. And we've had a lot of issues with the property up on Floral Hill. One of my friends of almost 50 years lives back in there, and he's been watching it, he's been concerned about it. And then we all know that there's other people that have expressed concern. What has been allowed to happen there, whether the house was acceptable or not, it's really, it got beyond that. And it's created a lot of heartache with the neighbors and the people that work for the township. And I think that we can't afford to go through that again. We don't need that. Everything done right the first time doesn't have to be done over. No apologies, no amendments needed. And I'm just asking that moving forward, as this stuff becomes available, that if when in doubt, that this board be sought for their opinion and their permission because of their wisdom, and always looking out for the neighbors.
Thank you. I appreciate your point. And I miss Judy. I really do.
I can
And
get her on the phone. I think I can get her.
no, we want her in person, only in person. But I think on behalf of the board, I can say we need more public comment. It is important that we understand what our community wants us to do. And I think as an example, at 511 Potomac, if there'd been more communication between the neighbors, which I think also might be applicable to Floral Hill, we might not have such an issue. We might be able to resolve things much more expeditiously. It's just talking to people.
Well, I hope Coral Hill never gets dug up again. I hope that things can move on. There is a question though, whether the size of the house is following the zoning ordinances and lot size. And I would request that that be looked into and verified. So that they are in compliance. And I see a new house going up in the east one. That's pretty tight quarters up there too. Again, it's very simply about right and wrong. It's very simply about respecting this township, the forefathers and their ordinances. And anybody that doesn't want to respect that, they either don't need to work here or don't need to build here. And that goes from management on down, everybody.
I think one of the issues is, and this is where Judy has been valuable. One of the issues is the residents don't know the law, and the code is the law. And if people would take the time when they see what they consider to be a violation of the law, they would make an effort to see Scott, to see our assistant township manager, part-time firefighter, part-time EMT, part-time. Yeah, I think the word needs to be out that if you do see something and you have a question about it, we work for free, but we work for you. Those guys don't work for a whole lot, but they do work for you. And I think it's incumbent upon the residents in the community to take advantage of those of us who have accepted the role of enforcing the code. You got to come talk to us. You got to ask questions. You know, if you could just get that message out broadly. We want more public comment at these zoning hearing board meetings.
But everybody's busy, and most people don't even read the damn mail till after they reserve it, because they haven't opened their mail, because it wasn't a bill. And it was in a windowed envelope, and it was in a typewritten envelope, and they just thought it was tax notice or something. And that's a problem, and that's nobody's here's problem. But yes, you are correct, and I hope that moving forward, you know, South Sabine is a great place to live. My parents brought me home from the hospital to South Sabine. They moved out for a short period, but they come back and built their forever home there. And even though I might have lived in East Washington, our family business was in this township. So my relationship to this township, and now I'm living at my mother's, caring for her with dementia, it goes back a long way. And you guys know I was very instrumental in what went on with the TIF. That just turned out to be a good old classic bait and switch. The taxpayers got screwed again. And we got elected for a reason. George got elected for a reason. What went down that day went down for a reason. It's because people are paying attention. People in South Sabine are good, honest, hardworking Americans. And they don't deserve to be disrespected, period. And this is probably the best board that's ever respected.
I agree with all that, so get involved. And I know
I'm gonna be
You
70
are.
when I get the hell out of here. Trust me, yes.
any other public comment, please.
Hi, Brenda Brumbaugh. I'm actually an alternate to the board. I don't know if you guys even know who I am. But anyhow, just to introduce myself, I did want to talk about one thing, and I'd already went to the zoning officer about this. United Rental down here on Manifold Road. I don't live on Manifold Road, but there are a lot of residents who come in and out of the wellness center there. And when you leave there, that is a bad, really terrible look for the South Sabine Township. That is a mess right along there. So I guess there's not an ordinance about that, but I know there's a lot of businesses in South Sabine who have little tape across the fencing down there so you can't see all that mess. When you pull out the wellness center and you look over there, that is a terrible, terrible look for South Sabine. And when I said something about it, I got a reply back, that's not a country club. Okay, it's not a country club, but that is your community, and that just looks awful there. So I don't know if you can have some type of ordinance that could stop them from allowing to jump that all up along there. When you drive past it, that just looks terrible, it looks bad for the township, see that mess there. Because no other places like that, Millcraft is right down the road there, and they don't have it looking like that, and they're a factory. They have little tape in between the fence post there, or the fencing there. So I don't know if that's an ordinance, it can be a new ordinance that can be made, that they're not allowed to do that.
We can't do anything about that.
Right.
Absolutely.
So how do you start that process then?
That's an interesting one. One thing I'd like that you have done, and I appreciate it, is issues of concern to the community can be vocalized before us. We can't do anything about it, but at least we now are establishing a record that there is community concern about a situation. And I've seen somebody over there taking notes, copious notes, I'm sure. And I think that's good. And, you know, I think I can speak for the three of us. Public comments may not be,
Somewhere.
They
somewhere.
started, you would have to go to the Board of Supervisors. And if it's zoning related or code, typically, definitely if it's zoning, but again, I don't want to speak out there, I don't, this is a separate board, but typically it starts at the planning commission level. So if you wanted them, you would need to ask to be on the agenda likely, or just email in whatnot to the staff.
For the supervisor.
For the supervisors, and then alternately, what would likely happen if that was something, they would ask the planning commission to look into that, review that, and then make a recommendation for the board to consider different provisions or regulations that might look to address what your concerns are. But yeah, it goes through it's a planning commission / board matter. They're called the zoning hearing board, so it's a little confusing when you think of ordinance to zoning, but they only hear very narrow items related to zoning, variances, special things of that nature. The ordinance aspect of it would go through the planning commission.
Thank you.
I find it interesting, the township spent tens of thousands of dollars to fight people down there that junkyard in the Grand Forks. But other little things like this is really going. And I think to your point, I don't disagree with you. And it wouldn't take a lot to put the plastic straps in. I mean, they're a business, they gotta do what they gotta do. But that road is a gateway for our community. And I think gateways are important today because it's an unsafe gateway, it's a state road. But nevertheless, it's our job to keep the township as good as this road.
Mr. Allen works for beautification.
Yeah.
You got how many people come out of the wellness center? There are all those doctors' offices there, plus that extended living back there. And people come into South Sudan and first thing they pull out, they look at all that. Dear God, I would never want to live there. And that's what I've had people say. I have friends that came from out of state. And they look at that and you take them to the wellness center and then they come down and look at that and they shake their head. I mean, it's disgusting. It looks bad. I know it's not a country club, but we kind of insulting to be told that too. I was not very appreciated.
any more public comment? You understand what we need? Good. And call any of those three gentlemen if you have any questions. And we hope to get things done next month.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Merry
Thank you all.
Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yes.